Welcome. In this video, we will learn how to configure the SSH service using CFEngine. By the end of this video, you will have seen how easy it is to use CFEngine to enable sshd and also to configure some parameters in the sshd config file. So let's get started. Here we have our basic CFEngine skeleton file, which has a control body, which loads the standard library, the CFEngine standard library, and an empty main bundle, which will allow us to provide a default entry point for our policy file. So what we want to do is have a new bundle called bundle agent sshconfig, which is where we will actually do the work of configuring SSH. To start, let's say we just want to enable SSH. This can be very easily done with the services promises. In this services promise, we can simply say that we want the sshd service with a service policy of start. This very simple policy will make sure that the sshd service is started if it is not running already, so that this policy is actually functional. Here in the main bundle, we will add a methods promise that simply calls our sshconfig method. That way, when we run this policy file by itself, it will start at the main bundle, call the sshconfig method, and make sure that the sshd is started. Now, we want to do something a bit more complex. We want to be able to configure some of the SSH parameters as well. So we are going to augment this bundle with some variable declarations. Let's say that we want some parameters that we will say are, let me just format this, create here a quick skeleton. You'll notice that this data structure that we're creating here as the config variable is a JSON data structure. This can also be loaded from an external file, but we are showing it now here included in the policy so that we can see everything at once. We are simply going to say, for example, that the protocol parameter needs to be set to protocol version 2. We are going to set the X11 forwarding parameter to no. We don't want X11 forwarding. And we want the use DNS parameter set to no as well. And finally, we want the permit root login parameter set to no. So these are the parameters that we want to configure in our SSH configuration. We could specify more and change their values, of course. But you'll see here we are creating a declarative specification of what we want. Now, based on this parameter declarations, we are going to operate on the SSH configuration file, in which we say sshd config, and we are going to do something very simple with it. We're going to edit its lines using a bundle that comes as part of the standard library called setConfigValues, which simply takes the name of the variable that we want to apply as config values. So we can say sshconfig.config. You'll see sshconfig is the name of the bundle. Config is the name of the variable that contains our parameters. And we want to know if the configuration was successful or what happened. So we are going to add a classes parameter to this promise, which sets some classes according to the results of the operation. So we are going to say these are bundle local classes, and they are going to be named after sshd config. And we are going to see what this does in a moment. So now we have the declaration of our parameters, and we also have the operation that we want to do by editing the file. Now, if the configuration is changed, we want to restart the services. So this is where these classes parameters come into place. then we are going to say that if the sshd config repaired class is set, you'll see sshd config is the name that we specified up here, and repaired is a case in which some change was made to the configuration file. So in that case, we want to restart the sshd service. And otherwise, by default, in the case where this class is not set, we will continue with our default behavior of just starting this, making sure the service is started. And this is it. Now we can see if this works. We can come here to my CFEngine VM. And here, let me see, we have our SSH config file, which I just typed. And we are going to simply, first of all, just to show that some changes are taking place, you can see the current values of those parameters that we are going to set. And we are going to simply say CFEngine-inform so that we get some information about what's happening. We are going to use the no-log parameter so that we always make the full evaluation of the policy, and we are going to run the SSH config file. Let's run this command. It seems I have an error in my policy, and I think what it is, I have a typo here. The bundle that I want to use is called results, not result. This is a typo, but we fix it, we run it again, and now we can see that the sshd config file was edited and that the sshd service was restarted because some changes took place. We can actually run our grep command again, and you can see here that permit root login is now set to no. X11 forwarding is also set to no, and the other parameters are also set to the correct values. This is basically it, just for you to see if we run this policy again, the system is already configured correctly, so CFEngine does nothing. This is the nature of convergent configuration that CFEngine enforces based on promise theory. And this is it. I hope you found this useful, and thank you for watching.